A Beacon of Light, Acharya Sushil Kumar, written by David Christopher Lane, narrated by Jason Zenobia. Syadvada in Jaina metaphysics, the doctrine that all judgments are conditional, holding good only in certain conditions, circumstances or senses expressed by the word syat, Sanskrit may be. The ways of looking at a thing, called Naya, are infinite in number. The Jainas hold that to interpret experience from only one Naya, or point of view, to the exclusion of others, is an error comparable to that of the 7 blind men feeling an elephant, each of whom concluded that the part he was holding represented the elephant's true form. Encyclopedia Britannica. I first learned of Acharya Sushil Kumar, the renowned Jain monk and teacher, when I was 21 years old. It was back in the fall of 1977, and I was doing research work at the UCLA library. I had secured a relatively rare copy of World Religious Conference, Delhi, 1957, which detailed the pioneering work of Acharya Sushil Kumar and other distinguished spiritual masters, including Kirpal Singh, the founder of Ruhani Satsang, to bring various religious factions together and emphasize their common goals. Near the end of the proceedings, Sushil Kumar, who during those days was known with the honorific Muni, was unanimously elected as the chief convener and asked, along with Sant Tukdoji Maharaj, to develop the Fellowship of Goodwill worldwide. Jain Ideals. Right knowledge, right faith, and right conduct are the 3 most essentials for attaining liberation in Jainism. In order to acquire these, one must observe the 5 great vows. 1. Non-violence, ahimsa. 2. Truth, satya. 3. Non-stealing, acharya or asteya. 4. Celibacy, chastity, brahmacharya. 5. Non-attachment, non-possession, aparigraha. At that time, I didn't know much about Jainism and was deeply impressed by Acharya Sushil Kumar's philosophical outlook. He was pictured with bushy hair, glasses, and wearing all white. I was intrigued about why he had a cloth covering his mouth. I decided there and then to learn more about him and Jain teachings. I have been a professor of philosophy for the past 30 years, and I am often asked about which religion or which ethical system I find most impressive. I always give the same answer: Jainism. Why? Because, unlike almost all other systems of belief, Jainism advocates a philosophy of non-violence, ahimsa, in all directions, and encourages showing compassion to all life forms, from an ant to a dolphin to a human. Jainism also stresses the need to have a multifaceted worldview, where different angles of perception are appreciated and understood. The concept of anekantavada, Sanskrit, many-sidedness, is such a profound and necessary injunction. It is a unique contribution to spirituality, and one wishes that the twin concepts of ahimsa and of anekantavada could be the guiding pillars of world civilization. I illustrate the greatness of Jainism with one simple thought experiment. It is late at night and you are walking alone down a dark alley, and 5 very devout believers are coming toward you, and they all belong to one religion. Which religionists would make you feel the safest? The answer is always the same: Jain monks. Mahavira, also known as Vadamana, was the 24th Tirthankara, ford maker and propagator of Dharma, who revived Jainism. This is a revealing response and demonstrates why I feel strongly that the ideals of Jainism are worthy of being much more widely known. Thus, back in 1983, I was excited to meet Acharya Sushil Kumar, one of the great modern exponents of Jainism, who broke with tradition and decided to venture to America to spread the teachings of this most ancient philosophy. I'm not quite sure how I learned that Acharya Sushil Kumar was going to be in Long Beach, California for an extended period, but I distinctly remember that the Movement newspaper in Los Angeles encouraged me to write a brief article about my visit, which was published just weeks later. Guruji was born into a Brahmin family on June 15, 1926, in the village of Shikpur, Haryana, India. Leaving home at the age of 7 to live with Sri Chotilalji Maharaj, Guruji was once visited in spirit by His Holiness Rupchandji Maharaj. That yogi who had left the body a century earlier appeared and told the boy he was destined to become a monk. Hinduism today. It was a typically sunny day in Southern California when I finally did meet Acharya Sushil Kumar. He greeted me warmly at the small center he was staying at, along with several other Jain monks. I was fortunate to be able to ask any question I wished, and we conversed for over 2 hours on a variety of subjects. Although we touched upon many aspects of Jainism, from strict vegetarianism to the monk's habit of not eating past sunset, I was particularly interested in Acharya Sushil Kumar's meditational discipline, since he spoke at length about the efficacy of Arum Yoga, which centers on the divine inner sound. We discussed how this yogic system had much in common with Shabd and Nad Yoga, which also focuses on listening to an inner sound current which pulls one up. Song of the Soul, Ahum Yoga. A system of teaching called Ahum Yoga is offered for those who subscribe to any faith or no faith and who seek a practical way to purify themselves, to be healed from all types of imbalances, to further their goals, to realize themselves, to attune themselves with the universal energy of the divine. Acharya Sushil Kumarji Maharaj's enlightened teachings enable one to grasp the principles underlying all mantra repetition or spiritual chanting. Furthermore, one can actually chant the Namokar mantra with an understanding of how it can be so beneficial and efficacious, as well as why it is truly song of the soul. Excerpt summary from Namokar Mantra and the Science of Sound. Since I had met with a number of Shabd Yoga gurus in the Sant Mat and Radha Swami tradition due to my research work in North India in 1978, 1981 and 1983, I asked Acharya Sushil Kumar about his relationship with Kirpal Singh, Darshan Singh, and other masters in the tradition. He was on intimate terms with each of them and spoke about the underlying unity of these related meditational techniques. It is of historical interest to note that Acharya Sushil Kumar confirmed that Kirpal Singh had personally informed him that he intended to appoint his eldest son, Darshan, as his spiritual successor. This is significant because there was much controversy surrounding succession when Kirpal died in 1974. Additionally, I was fascinated to learn that Acharya Sushil Kumar had visited with Baba Fakir Chand, the famous unknowing sage, in late August of 1981 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where Fakir had been hospitalized after surgery and was in a coma-like state. Acharya Sushil Kumar visited Mercy Hospital and told those in attendance that Fakir was in samadhi and was not to be disturbed. This later turned out to be true, since I was told by the nurse that Fakir had awoken from his coma just prior to dying and explained that he was in deep meditation and wanted to exist consciously. Later we would learn that Acharya Sushil Kumar also was fully aware when he was going to die. According to Jainism, all living beings, irrespective of their size, shape, or different spiritual developments, are equal. No living being has a right to harm, injure, or kill any other living being, including animals, insects, and plants. Every living being has a right to exist, and it is necessary to live with every other living being in perfect harmony and peace. Jain Education 1. Acharya Sushil Kumar was politically active in America despite acknowledging that politics has been a dirty business from the very beginning. He was especially keen to rid the world of atomic and hydrogen bombs, which he felt was a scourge on humanity. However, the esteemed Jain monk told me that real change can only transpire when the human heart is transformed. This can only happen when we realize the unity of all beings and that we ourselves have a responsibility to lessen violence, first by finding peace within ourselves. Only when we have stilled our own minds can we hope to positively influence the tempestuous behavior of others. Jainism is not so much a set of beliefs as it is a way of living in harmony. Jainism is a way of life to be embodied. I asked Acharya Sushil Kumar a few questions about his personal habits, and he explained that he ate his final meal of the day hours before sunset and that meditation was a key cornerstone in his life. I noticed Acharya Sushil Kumar was not dogmatic in his thinking and explained that the key tenets of Jainism are universal since they dovetail with all of humanity. He kindly allowed us to take several photographs of him, which we later developed in beautiful black and white portraits. Acharya Sushil Kumar was not self-conscious about his appearance, and with his relatively short beard and somewhat unruly hair, he didn't give off any airs of being spiritually superior. He was humble about his many remarkable achievements and made each person feel special and worthy. I could tell that his utmost concern was the uplift of humankind and trying to find a way out of the increasing violence that had overtaken the modern world. He was particularly concerned about the growing violence in the Punjab, which reached tragic proportions in the mid-1980s. I wished I could have spent more time in Acharya Sushil Kumar's presence and learned more details about Ahum Yoga, since he was adept at its practice and knew subtle details about how to practice it correctly. His health was quite good when we met as he was approaching his 60s. I was saddened to learn of Acharya Sushil Kumar's death, but by all accounts he was well prepared for his final departure. Jainism insists that one should not only refrain from falsehood, but should always speak the truth, which should be wholesome and pleasant. One should remain silent if the truth causes pain, hurt, anger, or death of any living being. Truth is to be observed in speech, mind, and deed. One should not utter an untruth, ask others to do so, or approve of such activities. Jain Education 2. Hinduism Today ran a feature about his life and work and described clearly sensing that the end was near, put himself into deep meditation and died as he lived, peacefully. On April 22, 1994, at his New Delhi ashram, His Holiness Acharya Sushil Kumar Ji Maharaj, one of this century's most prominent international peace workers, head of the International Mahavir Jain Mission, IMJM, had returned from early afternoon meetings uneasy, complaining of internal pains. PN Jain reports, He continued meeting visitors until 3 p.m., then retired to his room and complained of severe pain. A doctor was summoned. Guruji sat on his bed in the lotus position. He bent forward in that position, leaning his head into a pillow, and entered Mahasamadhi a little before 4 p.m. Acharya Sushil Kumar's influence hasn't diminished in the least, and more people today are seeing the great value of Jain ethics and are incorporating these moral values in their day-to-day lives, from promoting vegetarianism and lessening speciesism to becoming more tolerant of differing viewpoints. The world is fortunate to have the shining example of Acharya Sushil Kumar as a beacon for how to live a better life. Jainism has much to offer, regardless of one's religious affiliation. As the editors of Hinduism Today insightfully commented, the great Jain monk knew it was spiritual knowledge that people need most, and he gave it every time, everywhere. In happiness and suffering, in joy and grief, we should regard all creatures as we regard our own self. Mahavira. This has been A Beacon of Light, Acharya Sushil Kumar, written by David Christopher Lane, narrated by Jason Zenobia. Copyright 2019 by David Christopher Lane. Production copyright by David Christopher Lane.
Audible hopes you have enjoyed this program.